Okay, today's September 16th, 2015, and we're here with Tony Pilata on Peggotty Beach Road in Scituate, Mass. And the reason we're here is that back in the day, Tony was one of the Scituate Irish sea mossers. Even though he's Italian, there was an enclave of Italians here that competed with the Irishmen. And we're interviewing Tony today to get one of maybe one or two of his memories of those days. What years are we going to be talking about here, Tony? The 40s?
Yeah, the 40s.
And you were coming down to a summer cottage with your parents back then?
On 8 Peggotty Beach.
And what were your parents' names?
Arthur and Elma.
Arthur and Alma Pilata. Okay. And how old were you when you first landed in here?
Months old.
Just months old.
Yeah.
Okay. As the years went by, you became aware of Irish sea mossing being done by the O'Neills and some of the other Irish people that lived here on the cliff?
That's right. The Flynns and Mark Flaherty and all the old timers.
Okay, so we had the O'Neills, the Flynns, Mark Flaherty, and when you say the Flynns, that includes Mim Flynn, the mossing queen, right?
Yeah, and Johnny and
Johnny Flynn.
and his other brother, I can't think of his name.
And those guys were pretty old when you were like a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us the story about that you just told me a little while ago about Walter O'Neill and George O'Neill and some of those guys rowing out to go mossing, and you guys hopped in the outboard.
We went ahead and Walter, Freddie, Georgie, the three of them had their boats, and they headed out to Third Cliff rowing.
From Peggotty?
From Peggotty.
Okay.
And my next door neighbor, Jack Coletto, and myself, we tagged along about a half an hour later after we made our sandwiches for lunch. And
How old were you guys?
about 16.
And how old were the O'Neills?
Well, they were in their 20s.
In their 20s, okay.
And we went ahead and as soon as we get out there, of course, Walter and his brothers had already had quite a bit of moss. And we get out there, and the first thing Jack Coletto and I do is throw the anchor over because it's lunchtime. And we're going to have our sandwiches, and Walter yelled over us, "What are you doing? It's time for mossing. We only have a couple of hours." And I says, "Yeah, but it's lunchtime." So we had to have lunch. So there was always some cute stories from it.
All right, so there you go. This illustrates the difference between Italians and Irish. Irish not worrying about the food until they get the work done, and then later on they'll have the food and a drink maybe. And the Italians want to eat right away, no matter whether the moss is there for the taking at that moment or not. What did you have, meatball sub, Tony, do you think?
No, peanut butter and jam.
All right. So there's one story there. We're going to cut that right there so we have a short segment here. Okay, today we're here with Mr. Gilbert Patterson on Hazel Ave in Scituate, Massachusetts. Gilly, as he's been called, his nickname is now, in the early 90s?
I'm only 88.
Oh, he's only 88, okay. And he is one of the old-time mossers, although he did other things too. He was a police officer in Scituate. And did you do any lobstering, Gilly?
Oh yeah, I lobstered when I was 15 or 16 when the license was $5, not 260.
Was that out of a skiff?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you go mostly over in Long Ledge area over there?
Yeah, all along the beach down at Shore Rages.
All right, so tell us about your mossing experiences. How many years you mossed, how old you were, what kind of a boat you had, and things like that, and who you sold to, Gilly.
Well, my two brothers, Tom and Charlie, and my father, Gilbert, we all mossed. Like when I was in high school, and I graduated from high school in 1943. And my father, there used to be a saltwater brook in the back of our house over the sandhills. And my father had, he made his moss, he cured it. Instead of later on, it was all so green out of the boat. But he cured it in a bleaching process where he had large wooden barrels would fill with salt water at high tide. And when the moss was spread out on the sand, and it bleached itself from dampness or rain, when it got down to a pinkish, even a little whitish, would dry it and pile it up in front of the saltwater barrels for washing. And early in the morning, I can remember my father washing it. He had maybe five or six of those large barrels, and he'd pitchfork it, let it soak in salt water for a while, then he'd pitchfork it out, and it would be re-spreaded on the sand. And when it finally got to a point where it was bleached and white, he'd gather it up and save it probably till the end of the season. And he used to sell it to the Kraft Cheese Company, and would load it on the old Model A and take it down to the Greenbush freight train.
Yeah.
And the moss would leave from there.
Okay, so the moss at that point, was it all baled up in bales or just loose?
No, in those days they had sugar barrels.
Okay.
Wooden tops. They packed it in sugar barrels. It was later on, like when Tom Dwyer was the Mossing King, baling became very, everybody baled it. There's a wooden baling box, and it line it with burlap, and the moss would be placed in there, not always cured. Maybe some of it was half dried or whatever stage it was in. And at one time, Tom Dwyer...
Okay, hold on one second, Gilly. I'm going to cut this right here. Okay, so we're back with the second segment here. Hawk Hickman interviewing Gilly Patterson. And we're just gotten to the point where we're now moving from people curing their own moss to Tom Dwyer.
To the saltwater brook there.
Okay, so if you took a left on Gilson now, where Denny Zuka used to live, right in there, are you talking about that area right on your left before you get to the salt marsh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then even across the street, he had some land there that he cured moss on too.
Okay.
And, then at one time he rented a large brick building from the proving grounds from the Goldstein family.
Up on Hadley Road.
Yeah. And,
okay.
That's where all the moss ended up, tons of it.
Didn't he have a drying machine in there too?
I would assume he did. I don't recall exactly, but that's when barrels went out and baling moss was current.
All right, so now are we moving from the 40s into the 50s at this point? Or are we still in the 40s?
Well, when I get out of the Navy in when I did get out.
Well, the war ended in 45.
Yeah.
So maybe 45, 46.
Yeah, I think it was the end of 45.
Okay.
And
Okay, we're back again with Gilly Passon, segment 3, and he's going to explain how Tommy Dwyer gradually moved out of the picture of buying the moss and how a fellow named Lucian Russo moved in. Go ahead, Gilly.
After that, it sort of died down a lot, but I've seen pictures of even before my time, on the Harborside Beach, between the yacht club and the front beach, that the mossers used to spread the moss there and cure it in barrels
Is that
right on the beach.
Is that what's known as Jericho Beach?
Now, yeah.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, Paul Reynolds lived at the corner of Barker Road and Jericho Road, and he spread his moss right in front of the house because there weren't any buildings there, no marinas there.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, Tom Dwyer, where the Pier 44 is now, that was all his land, and he owned the marina at that time.
Tom Dwyer did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he built the Pier 44 restaurant. He built that building with the understanding they'd never have a liquor license there.
Yeah.
So, so he was a man of many talents, and he owned Bailey's Liquor Store prior to that, and his son Fred ran a Texaco gas station next to the Welch Company in Scituate Harbor, and a very active man, very nice man too.
He wasn't the fellow that discovered the gold or silver coins from the shipwreck off Peggotty or Doherty's Cove, was he?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, okay. All right, so when you said things kind of died down, Gilly, you meant instead of lots of families and going out and getting the moss, hand-picking, and a lot of people being involved, it began to devolve into young high school kids and college kids and sort of that type of a summer job where they'd sell it green to Lucian. Okay. Well, that's good because that's what we covered in the first book, and you've kind of filled us in on what happened from World War II up to the point where Lucian started buying. Okay, here we are again, segment 4, and Gilly's going to tell us about the guys he was in high school with who were mossers and lobstermen, and then what they did before the war and then after the war. Go ahead, Gilly.
Yeah, Fred Bergman was an excellent lobsterman, and he was a good mosser. He was just a very hard-working guy. And Barney Dwyer was his equal. And they used to go many times. They'd roll down to Cohasset to get on the big ledges down there, and they could get much more moss quicker than the smaller rocks right off the sand hills that everybody mossed off of. Then the Duffys, moss,
Jack Duffy,
Neils, they mossed like over around the cliffs.
Yeah.
And Conroy was involved in mossing and buying and curing it on
Doherty's Cove near Young's Boat Yard?
Yeah.
And that was Fred Conroy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I never knew the extent of his operation there, but I know Jackie Duffy worked over there for him.
And Jackie was also a police officer, right?
Yeah, Jackie was a police officer.
Okay.
But in those days, Scituate was a family sort of place. Everybody knew everybody, and
right.
And Watson was one of the most important industries of our time at that time. And
a lot of people
was too, and it also is today.
A lot of people depended on that income to support their families.
That's it, true.
Now, can you describe what that typical day would be when a Barney Dwyer and a Fred Bergman might roll up to mine it? they would have their boats in the harbor on Jericho or on the beach at Sand Hills, or where would they start out from?
Well, we kept all our boats right off the beach over the Sandhills in front of Hatch's store. But most of them kept them in the harbor, and maybe some did on Peggotty Beach.
Yeah.
But
So how long a row would you estimate that is to go from Sand Hills Beach to the first mine at Ledges?
well, not all of them did row because they got out iron rakes.
Right.
And
Different.
we used to go up the spur track too to cut the thin birch trees to whittle down to make the poles to attach the iron rake to. And we'd wear out a pair of cloth wooden gloves and a couple of tides with the old iron rake. And you had to take off the moss and sprouts every time to get it off the iron rake, whereas the bronze rake, when they came into style, they just sort of flipped it when they got it up to the boat, and the moss almost came off.
Slid right off, right.
So that was a big important thing that they came up with later on after the iron rake.
Right. Okay, well, I think that covers it pretty well, Gilly. This is Hawk Hickman. I'm recording these videos for the Moss Museum and for Scituate Mossing History, and that's going to be the end of that segment. Okay, today, October 1st, 2015, we're here on Town Way, Scituate, Mass. With Peter Sheely, 88 years old, and the reason we're here is because Peter is another old-time Scituate mosser, part German, part Irish, and we're also here with Peter's wife, Ann, who's also Irish, so this is not unusual at all because most of the town has Irish roots. And Peter has a funny story he wants to tell us about Mark Flaherty.
Mark Flaherty had his cured moss stored in the barn, and a skunk got in there. And they were trying to get the skunk out before he would let go. Otherwise, it would ruin the moss. He was at his wit's end. Mark.
But wait, did he get the skunk out before it ruined the moss?
I think he did.
Oh, all right. Okay, now Peter's going to tell another story about the Flynn boys, Johnny and Billy. Go ahead, Peter.
Bill Flynn had a crook in his neck, and it was there from the time I knew him. He always had it, but it happened when he was probably a teenager. A cartwheel went over his neck and kind of did the damage.
And he was the same fellow that drove an old 29 Ford pickup?
Yeah, Model T.
A Model T, okay. And how he went so slow that the kids were passing him on
by on a bicycle.
That was Billy Flynn.
Yeah.
But Johnny Flynn was the one that was really known for his mossing ability.
Well, they were both good mossers.
They were both good, okay.
They would come in, they would have so much moss in their dories that they would have to scull their way in, especially when the big tides came. In other words, when the tide was when you had 12-foot tides here, they would go out that much further, and they could get the moss that was deeper
and thicker
because it was, and they'd come in and you could see them. They would
scull their
way in, and when they came in, they used to park their boat or moor their boat out on the thing, but they had the anchor attached to the bow, and what they would do is they'd hop off at the shoreline, they would push the boat out, and when it got out further enough, they'd pull this thing and the anchor would drop and catch. That's the way they And then at high tide, they'd go out and they'd bring it in. And I don't think half of them could swim.
And for those of you out there that don't know what sculling is, you have to sit in the stern of the dory, and there would be a little notch in the stern, and you'd put one oar through the notch and make like a fish's fin back and forth with the oar, because you couldn't row in the middle of the dory because there was so much moss piled up there.
Right.
That's what Peter's talking about there, folks. Okay, that was a good story, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, what?
Everything that
When we cut that a little bit too fast, Peter was going to tell us about everything that Billy built.
Well, Billy was a handyman of sorts. And when he built something, put a chimney on my mother's, pointed the chimney, and when he got through, there was a crook in it, just like his neck.
So he was kind of a carpenter,
Yeah.
and everything he built, he put a little crook in it.
Yeah.
So he had a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, and was Johnny the one that was out there very, very, very late in life with a pipe in his mouth, still mossing out there?
I don't know.
Okay, that's what I think it was Franny Dwyer told me, that he was still out there in his 80s pulling the moss with a pipe going, and
See,
they did.
Once Lucian was the one who was. At first, we used to sell our moss to Conroy, and then Crimco came in and they bought it, and then Lucian Rousseau came in later on, and he was buying it and storing it and so forth, and he had to give it up because he couldn't find a buyer.
Lucian,
Lucian couldn't find a buyer. They weren't.
what year was that?
Oh, that must have been in the 50s, maybe.
Yeah, so there was a few years when they weren't buying.
Oh yeah, well, he had it piled up. He couldn't sell it.
Yeah,
I think it just didn't become cost effective to moss anymore.
well, it made a comeback in the late 50s and early 60s because that's what my first book was about, mossing
Okay.
from the 1960 to 1997. So they must have found a market eventually. Okay, thank you, Peter. I'm going to turn this segment off now, and there you have it, folks. Peter Shealy on Town Way, Scituate, an old-time mosser, telling us some yarns. Okay, now we have Ann Shealy here now, Peter's wife, and how many years you've been married?
62.
62 years married. Wow. And might I ask how old you are?
84.
She's 84. And do you have any good memories or stories from the mossing days?
Well, we bought the land where this house is from Lucian Rousseau.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, the Moss King.
Yeah, and that was in the 1960s.
He bought the lot from. I bought my first lot next door from Edward Viola,
Yep,
former judge,
yep. Judge Viola, okay.
and Judge Viola sold the balance of it to Lucian Rousseau.
Okay,
And later on, when I was looking for it, I bought this lot that we're on now
Yep.
from Lucian Rousseau, and I filled in both lots.
okay. And then you built a house.
Yeah, and then after that, the Hatch Act came in.
Yep,
Nobody can fill marshland anymore.
that wasn't Hector Hatch that invented that.
It was the Texas. Yeah, no, it was the Texas. I think he was from Texas.
Yeah, okay. And anything else you want to add, Ian?
Well, Mr. Viola offered all of the kids of the crowd if they wanted to buy any of this land.
All the kids of the Mossing crowd?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Peter was the only one that took him up on it.
Oh,
So when
okay.
he met me, he said that he owned land.
Yeah,
And I knew he didn't. And he brought me down, and it was a flood tide, and the water was right up to the edge of the road.
yeah.
And I said, what are we going to do, live in a houseboat? We have 2 houses here, and we love it.
And what did he say when you said, "What are we going to do? Live in a houseboat?"
Then he got a little scared.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Well.
hadn't asked her
That's
to
a-
marry
He
me
hadn't
then.
asked me yet.
Oh. So you had to figure a way to answer her question of
Yeah.
how. You know, okay.
Well, I figured Golly,
Yes.
Ken Gawley.
Ken Golly.
Yeah.
I got a hold of him, and he did all the filling.
Yeah.
Filling only cost, I would say, almost about $1,000 a lot to fill them.
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
How much did we pay for the first lot?
I paid $335 for the first lot over there, and $675 for the lot that we're sitting on.
There you go, folks. Almost beachfront property in Scituate, Mass. Back in what year, Peter?
1950.
54, 55.
54. The assessed value on my taxes has the land valued each lot $315,000
Now.
now.
Yeah. All right, another great story. Let me cut that one right there. Okay, today we're in Scituate, Mass. We're on the corner of Meeting House Lane and Kent Street. We're speaking with Lorraine Pallotta Quinn, who was raised on Peggotty Beach. Arrived on Peggotty when, Lorraine?
1929.
Around 1929. And Lorraine, like many other girls and family members back then, would go down to the rocks and pull Irish sea moss off the rocks with their bare hands and stuff it in burlap bags because it was worth money. And they made various things from it, pudding and it was used for in various other food products. Lorraine, can you just give us a quick summary of a typical day?
A typical day,
Pulling the moss off the rocks?
well, it had to be low tide, naturally.
Right.
And once we saw the boys going out in the boats, we would just grab burlap bags and stuff the bags with the moss that was washed up on the beach.
And those boys would be your brothers, or
My brothers.
and what were their names?
Well, my oldest brother was Sonny Arthur Pallotta. Then there was Joe Pallotta. And then there was Anthony. But I don't think Anthony did too much mossing. He was much younger.
So,
But then my boys mossed.
yep,
And
right,
my oldest boy was Jay.
yep.
And then came Arthur. And then Gary and Matthew.
And that was in the 60s.
Yes, and they all mossed.
So here we have an Italo-American Italian family moving in the Irish Riviera and
Right.
getting involved with the Irish sea mossing.
That's right.
How did that work out?
It was wonderful. Everybody was wonderful.
Everybody got along.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And do you remember how much you got paid a pound when you
Probably a penny or two.
penny or
pound,
two a pound, and you brought it over to First Cliff,
over to Conroy's.
Fred Conroy,
Yeah.
and
over
his
to
assistant was
Teddy Vinyl.
Teddy Vinyl.
Yeah.
And how would you get the burlap bags over to First
No,
Cliff?
I don't even remember.
Maybe pull them on a
Remember what we
card
did.
or something.
Probably.
Yeah,
I can't even remember. That was a long time
a
ago.
long
now.
time ago. Okay, any other good stories, Lorraine?
I could tell you a story about my brother.
All right, let me cut this for 1 second and we'll do a separate video. Okay, we're back here with Lorraine Pallotta Quinn. This is the same day. And Lorraine has another short, humorous story about mossing, which is related to waking somebody up in the morning. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Well, it goes like this. It was very hard to get Peter Shirley out of bed in the morning. So my brother would bring a piece of string over and have him tie it around his big toe and so that he would be able to wake him up in the morning, and he'd go over early in the morning when it was low tide, and pull the string to get that lazy Peter Shealy out of bed to go mossing.
And this was your brother Joe
My
Pilata.
brother Joe Pilata
Okay.
and Peter Shealy. They were good friends for many years.
So it's dark outside. It's an early morning tide, and Joe's afraid Peter won't. He doesn't want to go in the house and wake the family up. So there's a string hanging out of the window, attached to Peter's toe. Joe yanks on it. Peter knows that's the cue to get up. And he comes down, and off they go.
Right. Otherwise, Peter would sleep through it. Sleep through the low tide.
Oh, that's a great story. Thank you very much, Lorraine.
You're very welcome.
Okay, today we're interviewing Betty Martin McLaughlin down near Peggotty Beach. Betty is 82 now and was one of the girls who went down on Peggotty and loaded storm moss into burlap bags back in the
1939.
Late 1930s, 1940s, just right around the start of World War II. Betty, can you describe what you would actually do and who you would go with?
Well, I would go with my older sisters mostly, and of course it would depend upon the tide. It should be low tide, because we picked by hand. We had no equipment.
Did you pull it right off the rocks?
We yanked it right off the rocks and
I love it. You yanked it right off the rocks.
into the burlap bag.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was money in our hands.
Money in your
Right
hand.
into the bag.
And would you have to share that money with your parents, or did you get to keep it all?
We didn't share very much with my parents.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I was a loner.
Yeah.
They shared with us.
Oh, look at someone who wants in.
We would have to walk from rock to rock.
Yeah.
We'd see the moss and we'd stop.
What did you have on your feet?
Oh, nothing.
So you're walking all over the periwinkles
Oh,
and
the barnacles.
with bare feet,
You name it, yeah.
pulling moss off with your bare hands,
Right.
and stuffing it in burlap bags. Okay.
And we thought it was fun.
And you thought it was fun. All right, and you brought this heritage from the Aran Islands in the s'more. Your mother, your grandmother came over from the Aran Islands in Ireland
Exactly.
in a s'more and introduced you kids to this Irish moss.
Yes.
Did you ever make blancmange pudding with the Irish moss?
No, as a matter of fact, we didn't. We just took the wet moss
Yep,
and we took it over to First Cliff.
yep.
And we sold it, as I recall, for 2 cents a pound.
2 cents a pound.
Now, we had the option of spreading it on the beach,
Yep.
frying it, turning it over. But if you did that, it was not only a great deal of work, but if you had a rainstorm, it was ruined. So we felt a bird in the hand because we're two in the bush, and we just got rid of it as wet moss.
And you did this, Betty, from what age to what age?
I'd say from the age of 8 or 9 until I probably became interested in the other sex. What do you ask me? And then we had other things in our mind.
You started to notice the young, well-built, tanned Irish lads
Yes.
that were out pulling the lobster pots.
Yes,
And yeah.
At Peggotty Beach, not only Irish, but quite a few Italians.
Oh, the Italian stallions. Okay.
That was the Pilates.
All right, this was the famous Pilata clan.
Exactly.
All right, well, Betty, I want to thank you very much. This is going to be given to the Scituate Historical Society and the Mossing Museum. So I just want to warn you in advance that your family may not be too pleased with some of the things you've said here.
That's not new.
Oh, all right.
What's going to happen?
I've been around a long time now.
What's going to happen?
All right, and Peg, this is your sister Peggy right here, right?
My older sister Peggy.
And Peggy, did you also pull the moss off the rock?
I did, but being older than her, the price went up when she started mossing.
Yeah.
When I did it was a penny a pound.
You had to work even for less money.
Plus the fact that Jane O'Neill That's the O'Neills with the Great Lobster
Yep.
and Mawson.
The O'Neills, yep.
Jane would come over and throw rocks on my bedroom window to get me up for the tide. I'd grab my burlap bag and off I'd go, and Jane, we dug all the thing. Then we would drag the burlap, filled with moss, over to Paul Young.
And this was in the mid-1930s?
1820. Wait. Never been very good on the arithmetic.
All right, you drag it over to Paul Young's. Are you talking about the boatyard?
Yeah, the boatyard.
Yeah, over
Pickle, Pickle Young.
Pickle Young.
Pickle.
Yeah,
You'd weigh
and
it
you'd
in
weigh it in over there, over on First Cliff.
on First Cliff.
Well, that's an excellent memory, Peggy. Thank you very much.
No, it is. And that's it.
Okay, I'm going to cut the interview right here while we regroup and see what other stories we can think
Off the
about.
record.
Here we are again on clip number 2. We're still here with Kate and Peggy. And Peggy has a cute story she wants to tell about when she went out with Jane O'Neill, who was George and Doc's sister, and according to Peggy, was a knockout. And how this Jane had to be careful or she would distract all the boys who were trying to moss in their dories. Okay, go ahead, Peggy.
Well, actually, this happened when I was about 10 years old. Jane would come over and throw rocks at my bedroom window that was on 35 Peggotty Beach Road. And I would get my burlap bag. She had hers. We would start up and go out and moss. And we'd fill the bag and then take it all the way down Peggotty Beach Road, all over to First Cliff, and weigh it in at Pickle Young's. We got a penny a pound. And he would pay us right off the bat in cash. So that was going on every day that the tides were good.
Okay.
But my older sister and her friend Sally Backman, which is also a knockout, used to rake the moss in. They had the rowboat and everything.
Yep.
And that was quite a distraction for the O'Neills and the Plotters that were out trying to get a day's pay. Because
these knockout girls were out there. What were they wearing?
the bathing,
Bathing suits. Okay.
as skimpy as they could be.
Skimpy bathing suits. Okay. And the O'Neills, the guys, were trying to behave and work hard, but the girls were right there.
And then what happened was they were so distracted that Mary and Sally would fill the boat and row in, and they're still with hardly
The boys
any
would
moss.
still be looking, and they would have hardly any moss in their boat. All right, so that's a great story.
It is.
Thank you very much, Peggy. I love that story.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Hawk Hickman reporting from Peggotty Beach at Maura Hines Martin's house. Today is Sunday, September 15th, 2013. So we're going way back on the time machine here, folks. Back on the mossing time machine.
Okay, folks, today we're here with Peter Mahegan in Scituate Harbor on the old quarterdeck deck, which is now a coffee shop right next to Scituate Town Pier, which is right over there. One of the most beautiful harbors in New England. And the reason we're here with Peter, former co-host of the well-known Chronicle program, is because Peter is a former Irish sea mosser. And we are writing a second book on mossing, trying to cover from when mossing industry started in 1860, bring it right up through the beginning of my first book, which started in 1960. So we're trying to get interviews with some people who remember back into the 30s and 40s, and get some more insight into what was once a vigorous and thriving industry and provided work for generations of youngsters in Scituate. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Hawk.
So what Peter's going to do, he was part of the Peggotty Beach crew down at Second Cliff, and he's going to relate a funny story about one of his compatriots of that time, Franny Dwyer. These guys, of course, are all Irish heritage, And Peter, go ahead, tell the story about the day Franny Dwyer went down.
Well, we all mossed out of Peggotty Beach, Hawk, as you know, and we kept our boats there. I had a leaky tub that would sink almost every day. And Franny's, I think, had a few leaks in it too. These were all old dories. And this one day we were mossing at Third Cliff, which was one of our preferred locations because it was close to Peggotty where we anchored our boats. And we were all toiling away over there. I remember Paul Blanchard was there, and Franny and myself, and maybe a couple of other people. And all of a sudden I heard a yell. We were doing very well, by the way. We were really hauling in the
Hand
moss
over fist.
this particular day. I heard a yell and I turned around, and Franny's boat had swamped. He had so much moss in it, he thought he was going to break old Bert Stetson's record of the biggest tide ever pulled. And down his boat went right to the gunnels, swamped, and all the moss is now floating away, and he's sitting there in the middle of the boat, you know, maybe his head and shoulders sticking out of the water, mad as hell, and we are laughing as hard as we could laugh because it was such a funny sight to see our friend in such a pickle. So as I recall, we all came over and bailed the boat as best we could and saved as much moss as we could, and he had to row it home with all that water in it. So it was all great fun, and that job was fun. That's the thing about it. You know, some people hate to go to work. I mean, we were lucky, but we didn't know it. We thought everybody had this privilege, you know, of getting up in the morning and going out, getting your boat, working for at least 4 hours for a tide, and if you were lucky, you might pull a double tide. If the tide was real low in the morning, you could go again at night. So it was a memorable time, for sure.
And that day will always live in infamy for Franny Dwyer.
That's right.
All right, that's a great story, Peter. Thank you.
Okay, Hawk.
Okay, folks, we're back here with Peter Mahegan again on the quarterdeck deck, Scituate Harbor, and he's got one more Wallapalooza story of the old days with an old timer that was still around when Peter and Richie Dwyer and Franny Dwyer and those guys were still teenagers. Go ahead, Peter, take it away.
Well, Hawk, it's more of a visual memory than it is a particularly great story. We were all kids, we were all teenagers, but every once in a while someone would appear from a generation past on the mossing scene. And one guy in particular I always remember was Johnny Flynn, and he and his brother Bill lived in a house right at the base of Third Cliff, and Johnny had a beautiful small dory. It wasn't a beamy boat, it was very narrow. What I remember most about Johnny, he would occasionally pull a tide. Very rarely he'd show up, and we knew, you know, it was something kind of special. What I most remember is the way he rowed. He had this little economical rowing motion where he was barely moving his arms. It was almost like just wrists. But that little narrow dory would just fly along, and it was just one of those pretty sights that you remember. We didn't know Johnny well. He never said much. He didn't talk to us really. He was friendly. He'd say hello, and he'd be next to us, and he would occasionally come out and pull a tide, as we called it. And you know, he couldn't fill that boat very full. It was not a very big boat. But I suppose for him, as an old gentleman that he was, it was kind of a link to his youth, and he kept at it like so many people did. It was a hard thing to let go.
Hard thing to let go of.
And some people wouldn't. You know, I think of Billy Stetson, my dear friend and high school classmate. He kept going. I'd come back to Scituate 20 years later, and Billy'd still be out there mossing.
Right up to 1997.
And so it was a wonderful time for all of us, for sure.
So we could probably refer to old Johnny Flynn as a ghost out of the mossing past.
It was a sort of a link to a past when there were so many of the old Irish descendants who first came to Scituate and discovered this industry when they saw the moss that they remembered from Ireland and found a way to make a dollar.
Right.
And Johnny was of that earlier generation, and it was like a sort of a ghost from the past.
Ghost from the past.
When he would flick his wrist and that little dory would fly across Peggotty Beach.
Right. Excellent story, Peter, and thanks again.
Okay, Mark.
Okay, today is September 29th, 2015. We're here at the Irish Sea Mossing Maritime Museum in Scituate, Massachusetts. And we're here with Sally, Judy, and Nancy Backman. And the reason we're here with these three ladies is because they used to gather Irish sea moss back in the early 40s up through and into maybe the 50s. And they're going to just describe a little bit about what they remember about those days. So who's going to go first?
Well, why don't I start and say that our father thought we should have jobs.
Yep.
We lived on Peggotty Beach. He bought us each a rowboat, a small rowboat, and a big, long rake, mossing rake, and would set us out to gather Irish moss.
And you were going to get to keep the money that you earned, or did you have to kick into the family budget?
Well, we kept the money that we made,
Wow,
so
excellent.
we could buy some clothes.
To buy clothes, okay.
Of course.
And were there any boys that were going out Irish sea mossing that maybe you had your eye on?
Oh yes, we had lots of boys going out. The O'Neills.
Walter O'Neill, I kind of thought was on.
Walter O'Neill, his nickname was Doc, right?
Right.
Okay, who else?
George
George O'Neill,
and
Those O'Neills were good.
Freddie.
Freddie O'Neill, all right.
Yeah,
And which
they
one was the best looking?
Oh, they were all very.
They were all,
Handsome family.
okay, so part of going out mossing was so you could sort of keep an eye on them and
Yeah.
check on them.
Well, we would always see where they were working because
Yeah.
they always knew where the moss was.
They knew
growing.
where the good stuff was.
And so we kind of followed their boats.
And wasn't there a sister of the O'Neills?
Oh, Jane. Yes.
Jane O'Neill.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand she went out in her own boat too.
I don't remember her going out.
Oh, okay.
But there were 5 girls in our family. And
All right, hold it one second. I'm going to cut right there.
Do you want one?
Okay, we're back with the Backman girls now. And how many sisters were there?
There were 5 altogether, but Judy came along later, so she had her separate mossing experiences.
Okay.
And Anne, who was the oldest, was very involved with this mossing. She would, after we spread the moss on the beach, she would constantly check hers and turn it over, and it was very important to her. And I think she made $150 once, $150 one summer.
$150 in the whole summer.
Yeah.
And that was big money
That
back
was
then.
good then.
You'd buy a lot of clothes with that. And was she the oldest
She
sister?
was the oldest.
Okay, can you name them in the order of age? Anne,
Anne, Nancy,
Nancy,
Jean,
Jane,
Sally, and then Judy.
and Judy was the youngest.
Yeah,
Okay, great. And you lived where?
right on the beach
Right on Peggotty Beach.
in the summer in
Ev-
a shanty.
And where did you live in the winter?
Newton.
So you came down from Newton, had a nice little mossing shanty on Peggotty Beach,
Right.
and went out and got the Irish sea moss, and then the rest of the day got a tan and
Right.
followed the
depending on the tide, we
Yeah.
had to go out.
right.
You have to go out 2
Sometimes,
hours,
Right.
sometimes we had to go out during the day.
depending upon the tide.
So you had a great time.
And we had 2 of the old Mosser men, Bill and
Bill
the other
Flynn,
Bill
and,
Flynn
and his brother.
Bill and Johnny Flynn.
Bill and Johnny Flynn. And they would go by our house in the morning and bang on the side of the house and say, "Getting them up, Mrs. Backman, getting them up." And so we'd have to get up and go out.
So it was
One
their
early
job to
time.
get you guys up.
Yes.
They
And-
made it their job.
And how old were they compared to you girls?
Oh, we thought they were ancient. They were probably 50 or something.
They were maybe in their 50s. And you were what, teenagers?
Yeah, teenagers.
Oh, so okay. So they were adopting the local teenage girls and
Right,
and helping the parents get you out to work.
right.
Okay, that's an excellent story. Now, let me cut it again for 1 second and we'll do a third
You
segment.
okay?
Okay, here we are back again. So did each of you have your own boat?
Yes.
And they were sort of rowboats.
small rowboats, and they had these long rakes, you
The
know.
long rakes, okay. And you kept the boats on Peggotty Beach?
Right.
Dragged them down to the water each day?
Drag them down every day, and then we would go out, row out, and Nancy very often tipped over when she was getting ready to go
They
out.
used to tease me about
She would tip the boat over?
Yeah.
But when she tried to get in, she
I had
she
it so
wouldn't
full.
she wouldn't step into the middle. She'd step on the side. Oh, that's a good story. Okay, and how many pounds could you put in one of these rowboats?
I don't remember, but I do remember when we row in, and then one of the nice young men would bring a creel down to our boat.
Yep.
And they would help us load the moss onto the creel, and then they helped us carry the creels up the beach. They were so nice.
And were you guys, what did you have on? Did you have bathing suits on? Okay, so I understand why they were helping you. Okay. And so how many summers did this go on for?
I think I did it about 5 or 6 summers.
I think I did about 3.
Okay,
3
so
summers. I think, yeah.
so this is a fond childhood memory.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Well,
Part of our growing up.
Well, I want to thank you very much. This is special to have you be able to come down. How do you mind sharing your ages now?
I'm 90.
90 for Nancy, Judy,
77?
77.
I'm not sure. 76. How old are you?
I'm 87,
So I must be 77.
Okay, so there you have. We have a septuagenarian, an octogenarian, and a nonagenarian. Again, I want to thank you very much. This is Hawk Hickman doing this interview, and we're going to close it up here. And again, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hawk. I can't wait to read the book.
Okay. Okay, go.
We are the Peggotty bathing beauties. Don't you think that we are cuties? When to the harbor we'll walk. Everybody starts to talk. Listen to the chip chatter. What they say, it doesn't matter. These are things that we do to drive the town cuckoo.
And there you have it, folks. The Backman Girls plus Lorraine Quinn singing We Are the Peggotty Girls. Oh, We Are the Peggotty Bathing Beauty.
Oh, that was good.
Hawk Hickman bringing you that fabulous song. Okay, folks, today we're here in Scituate, Mass. with Bobby Stevenman in his workshop. Bobby's a welder and fabricator of multi-talents, and we're here primarily for the purpose of getting an oral and video of Bobby as one of the last Irish sea mosses from Scituate. Bobby, could you just give us a brief rundown of when you first found out about mossing and your grandfather having mossed, and then bring us up through the years?
Well, my grandfather mossed years ago, and my older brother Tommy did, and he's 9 years older than me. So then, when I got to be about 13, I bought a dory, got a rake. We used the steel rakes then, the iron rakes, and started that summer and did it every summer, and till 1965.
And what was your grandfather's name, Bob?
Pilo.
And he's the same fellow that we mentioned in the book as being the last man to walk from Third Cliff to Fourth Cliff before the great storm of 1898, correct?
That's what they say.
Okay. Now then you went in the service, and then what happened?
Then I never went back again, because, you know, one thing leads to another, and then you get a job, and blah, 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 and then I got married. So you just didn't have time for it, the summertime.
And then 30 years went by,
Well,
and
something like 25 or 30 years, I built a little dory, and I said, geez, I'd like to go out and pull a tide more. And I went to Doherty's Cove, and got a little over a barrel, and done it for years. And,
enjoyed it.
yeah, it's the best job you could ever have.
And a barrel, for those who don't know, is around 500 pounds.
Yeah.
And did you learn any life lessons from mossing?
It's the best job anybody could have. The harder you work, the more money you make. If you're a slub, you're not going to make much. And it's outdoors, just the perfect job.
For a teenager.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. One of the last of the old-time mosses, Bobby Steverman. We're recording this on October 19th, 2012. And Bobby, thank you very much for that interview. This will go in the Mossing Museum. Thanks again.
I'll be on the milk.
It's live.
Okay, here we go, folks. Today is August 1st. Summer is flying by. And we have a guest passenger in Hunky Dory today. Brian Pipes, straight from Japan. What city in Japan, Brian?
Yokohama.
Yokohama, Japan. He's here in Scituate for Heritage Days. And believe it or not, Brian and I went mossing. How many years ago, Brian? What year was it?
I can't do the math, but it was summer '76.
Summer '76. Lucian Russo asked me to pick Brian up on Beaver Dam Road and bring him down, get him ready for moss, show him the ropes, and off we went. It rained a little that day. We had Billy Stetson, myself, Brian. Who else, Brian?
You know, I can't remember the names. You and Billy Stetson definitely stuck out the most. A couple of Duffys were there. John Salvador, I believe.
So here we are, like
43 years.
43 years later.
Yeah, it's 43 years. I just did the math.
And Brian's going out on an early morning tide mossing, and he's going to have a great adventure.
Yes, I am.
Okay, cut it there, Brian.
All right.
Okay, coming in the harbor now. We got, I don't know, 400 or 500 pounds. Brian's rowing. He wanted to roll. He wanted to rake. He raked for a while. He did well, and now he's rowing well. But what do you think, Brian?
Well,
what are they going to say in Yokohama when they see this?
Shinji-rarenai.
Say that again?
Shinji-rarenai.
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 I don't believe it.
I don't believe it.
Unbelievable.
In Japanese.
Shinji-rarenai.
She's a Jundanai, whatever. It's hard to say.
There you go. Okay.
Hawk reporting from Scituate Harbor on the third day of our Irish sea mossing revival attempt. Rough seas, thunderstorms, you name it, but we've persevered. Try and go out again tomorrow. To be continued. Okay, here we are on 5:15 Saturday morning, August 21st, whatever it is, and we got Rodney and Jarius here from Virginia, and they're up here to see what's happening with Irish sea mossing, because they're going to become sea mossers someday, we think. All right. Now we get
Grab that rock again.
Grab that rock, Rodney. Okay, Rodney's reaching for the rock. Okay. Okay, he's trying to keep he's trying to keep from falling over. Pull it in, Rodney. Pull it in.
Oh, look at
Oh
that.
yeah, he's got another huge rake full. Okay, so what do you think, Rodney?
I think this is awesome.
He thinks it's awesome.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
He's loving it. Okay, today is Tuesday, July 27th. For the first time in a long time, we went out 2 days in a row mossing. Well, Jarius and I did. And then we had these guys show up, Rodney and Jerry, part-timers. Anyway, total, we got
335 plus 150.
335 plus 150, and then Rodney and Jarius had probably another, what, 400 each or whatever? 12, and a couple of £1,000 maybe, which is encouraging as we continue the program called MGA, Make Mossing Great Again. MGA, MGA, MGA.
I love MGA. MGA.
Hawk reporting from Cole Parkway, Scituate, Mass, where we are single-handedly trying to rejuvenate the 130-year-old sea mossing business. We're doing it using a septuagenarian, a sextuagenarian, and 2 young bucks. That's it for now.
Wait. Oh.
golden color, Orlando.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely amazing. The legend, Mr. Hawk.
Another wave coming.
Waves and everything.
Woo!
Like I'm in raging waters over there. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yep. Got just the right.
Get the sound of that. Get the sound of that. Beautiful sea moss. Condus crispus.
And Oceanus bracus. Oh, here comes a good one.
Oh, gee.
You made it. You made it.
Okay, calm down, Mr. Waves.
Sea moss. Red to the door.
Okay, folks, here we are today in Scituate Harbor at the launching ramp, and we have two people, believe it or not, came all the way from Ohio to find out how you forage for moss. Jennifer and Johnny, what do you think, guys? You excited?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
All right.
Definitely first time out here foraging moss ourselves, so we look forward to the experience.
So they do not know what they're in for, but they'll soon find out. I'm just joking. We should be able to get a little bit of moss and show them where it grows and what it's all about. Donna, you want to get over there for a minute? All right, so I have my rowing partner and girlfriend, Donna, who is going to help me row the dory, while Johnny and Jennifer are just relaxing, being passengers. And then when we get out there, we'll show them where the moss is and how you gather it. Okay, Johnny from Ohio, how did you like the mossing foraging experience today?
I really enjoyed it. This is my first time coming out. Jen and I came out from Ohio. Drove 12 hours to get out here and finally picked some moss. And it was a really great experience. We really enjoyed it.
And what do you use the moss for, Johnny?
We use the moss, well, we make sea moss gel with it, but we use it as a supplement, a food supplement. A superfood is really great for rebuilding the cartilage, helping rebuild the bones and whatnot.
How do you make the paste?
Oh, how to make the gel? I just boil the sea moss.
Yep.
On a low temperature.
Boil it in fresh water.
Distilled water, yeah.
Yep.
And let it cool. Then I just blend it up in a blender.
Yep.
And pour it into jars, basically.
And then you can make smoothies out of it,
oh, yeah,
whatnot.
Smoothies.
All right. And Johnny had his partner Jennifer here. We'll get her on camera shortly. And we were assisted today by Donna,
Hi.
my mossing rowing buddy.
Love those close-ups, yeah.
So, Hawk reporting from Scituate Harbor, Scituate, Mass, where people have been collecting moss since the Civil War. Wait. Oh. I didn't. Then there's a big handful. We got about 300 pounds. And there's Jennifer right over there. How'd you like it today, Jennifer?
It was nice. It was a nice experience.
You'll never forget it, right?
No, sir.
On a beautiful day. Right, Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
Pull that bag up straight and you'll be able to get more in it. Yeah.
Beautiful
That's it.
moss on a beautiful boat.
In fact, give me that bag. I'm going to dump more in these 2 bins. Okay, folks, 5 a.m. Sunday morning, June 23rd, maybe the 22nd, I forget. Anyway, what are we doing? We're getting ready to go Irish sea mossing with a couple of guys flying in from Dallas, Texas. We did one of these tours a couple of weeks ago, and now we're going to do another one. People that run health food stores where they sell seaweed supplements want to not only be able to buy sea moss, but they want to learn if they can actually gather it themselves. So that's what we're doing this morning. I got my mossing rowing partner, Donna, right here with me. Donna, you want to say hi? She loves getting up. We get up at 3. We hardly slept at all, but we're going to have a great day, right, Donna? So there you go. Scituate Harbor, 5 a.m. waiting for the 2 guys that are going to go out with us and learn about mossing. Clark reporting from Scituate Harbor.
See, and that's way right out the rocks. Man, Hawk is out here getting it. There we go. Breaking that sea moss.
Baby fine, she got healthy swag. Everything alkaline, I'm all up in my healthy bag. Sea moss magical, I'm asking where the jelly at. For the weight loss, have you asking where the belly at? Dropped it in my drink and elevate my concentration. Extra energy, revitalization. You can drink it in the club, it'll have your body shaking. You can rub it on your skin for the exfoliation. Baby, use the sea moss, that's in every opportunity. The sea moss gummies, they be boosting her immunity. I love it. Put it in her smoothie, she could drink it out of straw. When she find out I made it, said she wanna drink it raw. Hey, melanated stallion, brown like a pinto. Did you know the sea moss could really make your skin glow? Cutting off your eggs and we clearing out the mucus. Gonna get some sea moss off the coast of St. Louis.
Boss up, bladderwhack floss and of course burdock. Glow one swole when the sun rise.
Look, we're on the boat. Got Hawk, Donna, Tree. We out here.
Okay, folks, here we are back again. Scituate Harbor, Sunday, June 22nd. We didn't stay out long because it was raining for a while, and when we get out there, it was a southeast wind with rollers that were breaking. So all we were able to do was show Tree and John where the moss was, and then we raked in about 50 pounds before things got too rough to stay out there. But they got the idea, and they want to come back, and they want to go out all the time when it's good weather. Right, guys? They want to come live with us for the summer. Okay. And they're from Dallas, Texas. And what do you think? A little different from Dallas, guys? A lot different. What was the temperature when you left there? 93. And right now here it's about 68 with a chilly southeast wind coming off the North Atlantic. That's what we're talking about today, okay? This is Hawk reporting from Scituate Harbor, Sunday, July 22nd. Another successful mossing tour. You guys loved it?
I loved it. Definitely coming back. And y'all should go harvest with Hawk.
Yeah, we'll make you famous.
Yes, thank you, Hawk.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, folks, here we are. Day 2 of the great mossing adventure. And today, we killed it, baby. We got about twice as much as yesterday. Yesterday we had about 300. Today I'm thinking we got around 600. And right now we're on our way back into the harbor. Dory mate Donna is bailing.
Kinda.
Off and on, intermittently. And we're just going to take our time because it's flat calm, there's no wind, and the dory is rowing like a charm with the big load in it. This is what dories are made for, big loads. Big loads of fish or seaweed. Hawk reporting from the Atlantic Ocean just off Scituate Harbor. That's what we're talking about today. Popeye the Sailor Man stuff. This is the way we did it in the old days, folks. No motors. Rowing. Toughening up. Getting ready for life. That's what it's all about. Right, Donna?
That's right.
Okay.
with the lock. I think I'll take a walk in the park. Hey, 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 it's a beautiful day. I've got someone waiting for me, and when I see her, I know that she'll say, hey, 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 it's a beautiful day. Ha, 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 beautiful Sunday. This is my beautiful day. When you say that you love me. Oh my, it's a beautiful day. Birds are singing, and you're by my side. Let's take the car